It's all about reframing. And I think what's so hard is that when you don't expect to have to do this, that's where a lot of you're shocked. You're just shocked. I was 30 when I started trying. I didn't feel like that was too old or I'd missed the boat.
Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey everybody, I'm Sarah Clark. My mission is to inspire, motivate, and empower you. And most of all, I want you to wake up. So with functional medicine, we can discover what causes infertility and eventually reverse the condition. So today I'm excited to welcome Maya Grobel to the podcast today. And we're digging into what it takes to open up to all options when starting a family. So I connected with Maya about 3 years ago after I found her Don't Count Your Eggs blog, which is a Resolve Hope award-nominated blog. And I really love her willingness to show and share all aspects of her journey to parenthood. And her film, One More Shot, is heartbreakingly beautiful and raw. Even though you may find yourself doing the ugly cry like I did, the film is so inspiring and offers hope to couples starting a family. So I'm just going to do a little, give Maya's bio here. So Maya Grobel is a California licensed clinical social worker and a psychotherapist who specializes in supporting individuals and couples struggling to conceive. She's a mental health professional, member of the ASRM, American Society for Reproductive Medicine, and SEEDS, Society for Ethics in Egg Donation and Surrogacy, and feels very passionate about her work with this population. With her roots in social work, Maya feels strongly about advocating for infertility patients, and for many years wrote a Resolve Hope Award-nominated blog called Don't Count Your Eggs that followed her 5-year journey to parenthood, which finally ended with the birth of her daughter via embryo donation in 2015. Maya and her TV producer husband Noah made a feature-length film documenting their tumultuous journey to parenthood called One More Shot, which is now available on iTunes, Amazon, Vimeo, On Demand, and Netflix. And you can check out her website at mayagrobel.com, so MAYAGROBEL.com. So welcome to the podcast, Maya.
Thanks so much, Sarah.
Yeah, awesome to have you. So maybe kind of dig into how you came to...
Where do we start?
Yeah, where do we start? How you came to do this work, and maybe, you start where you want to start.
Yeah, sure. I can start there. Well, so I was a therapist for 10 years before sort of transitioning my career to focusing on working with infertility clients and patients, which I think you're right. A lot of people in this field sort of have a personal history and then find a way to make lemonade out of lemons, so to speak. Or I think also it's like when you go through infertility, it's such a specific journey and life education that you can't really get that in a classroom, you know what I mean? Or like an online course. And I mean, I've taken the online courses, but it's different when you have the background. You have to learn a new language when you go through infertility, and you have to learn different skills in terms of reframing your expectations, thinking about what it means to have a family, and changing the goalposts from carrying your child or having a genetic child to just parenting, and figuring out what you're okay with along the way. So I think when you go through the emotional and mental and physical process of infertility, it changes you, and it just gives you insight into something. So as I was going through stuff, I was also working as a therapist I was working actually at an agency called the Child and Family Development Center, right? Okay. There's the irony of that. I can't develop a child or a family, I should be here. But, I was working, and then I had to go part-time because my other part-time job was trying to figure out how I was going to have a baby and make a family. So, and that transition, and in that period, I wasn't obviously working with clients at that point because I was in my own struggle. And it is important to resolve your own struggle a little bit and get the education and take the courses and, get the mentors and supports and whatever else to be able to work with this population. But after I had my child via embryo donation, I knew that my career was shifting. And so, it took another year or so before I was really thinking about it and felt ready to support others. But I do it now and I love it. And I just feel like I don't know, I get it. I get it personally, but But I think everybody's journey is really their own. And just because I ended up doing something one way doesn't mean that's right for everybody else. And I really enjoy the process of exploring what the options are for people, because just because there are a handful of family building options, it doesn't mean it's right for everybody, or the same things are right for everybody. So that's a really personal thing to explore and understand, and within a couple or an individual, and what does it mean, and that kind of stuff. So that's what I specialize in now. I'm in West Los Angeles. And so I do that out here, and some work for a surrogacy agency, a local agency as well. So I really love it.
Yeah. And it's amazing kind of when you're of what you thought at the beginning of, because I'm a planner. So it's like, oh, I was going to have married at 25, have my kids at 28, and
like the checklist.
yeah, right. And then, oh, wait, that's not working out. And then you're like, oh, I will never do this. I'll never do that. Or I'll never go here. And next thing you know, it changes along the way. And for a lot of people come to me, and maybe it's same for you, that like that type A planner type, then letting go of, the how.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And it's all about reframing. And I think what's so hard is that when you don't expect to have to do this, that's where a lot of you're shocked. You're just shocked. I was 30 when I started trying. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel like that was too old, or I'd missed the boat. I've done yoga my whole life. I eat organic. I was super healthy, blah, blah, blah. I looked healthy. And I went to any doctor I went to for 2 years was like, you're young, you're healthy, relax. Because clearly relaxing gets you pregnant. But I'm a little high strung, I guess. But, but at the same time, my expectation was that by 32, I'd have one kid. By 35, I'd have two. You don't wake up one morning and decide you're going to, pursue embryo donation. Like a lot of stuff has to happen before then. So we went through all of that stuff. And in the process, you're forced to rethink things and rethink genetics and family and what does it all mean and what's it going to mean to the child. And there's a lot of unknowns about all of this stuff too. So, but I mean, it's all interesting. And of course, once you've resolved the infertility crisis for yourself, you can look back and go, okay, I get it. Maybe however you want to believe things, right? If things happen for a reason or, whatever it is, but I know it's like, I wouldn't have the child that I have. And she is so 100% our child that whether I needed to go through these things or it just happened this way, there's no doubt in my mind that I would, do everything all over again if I had to end up with this kid. Mm-hmm.
Let's dig into your, well, first of all, like the movies, I just watched it a couple of days ago. It did start to be fresh in my mind. And it is just so like real and raw, and you're like super vulnerable and showing all these things. So why did you guys decide to document this?
Warning, there is an enema scene right off the bat, right? Oh, yeah. I know. It's like anybody who watches this, I'm like, we're family now. Like, I don't know what people email me like, you feel like you know us. And I think that's the point. And we started documenting not really with the intention, or I guess not really with a known intention. We weren't like, we're going to make a film, because clearly we were maybe going to do IVF. It was going to work. And then we were going to be on with our lives. And what would that be? 5 to 8 minutes? But my husband has a background in film and, obviously my background in social work. When we started going through this stuff, we tried for about 2 years naturally with some intervention. I did Clomid. I think what else I did, but, ovulation test strips. I had that Bible, that book about, what is it called? Oh. Anyway, it's like it was some guide to, I was like kind of cervical mucus, all that stuff. Right. And when we were going to go see the reproductive endocrinologist, I just thought, we've been going through this for about 2 years or 18 attempts. And I just couldn't find anything that I related to. Anything I went to, I'm not on a lot of social media. Like I don't do Facebook. So like maybe if I was a little bit more connected, I would have found more. But anything I looked up online, blogs at the time or whatever, like videos, it was like a sad empty crib and like rain outside and just like, like that's how infertility was portrayed. And I was despair, like, it was just despair. And like, yes, it is. And but there's so many other specific and interesting, complex feelings and emotions that come up. And I didn't relate to much that was out there. Cause like, yes, I was sad, but I was also angry and confused. And I was also kind of hopeful and wanting to explore these different choices and stuff like that. So we started documenting just to see where it would go. And we thought, okay, if anything, we'll have something for our child who was born in this different way. and, through IVF or whatever. And then when our first IVF cycle was beyond a bust, I mean, we didn't even have embryos to put back in. I was like, oh my God, we just spent $15,000 and I did all this to my body and we have nothing. Like, that's not okay. And then I became more interested in like the finances of it and how do people do this? And some people have access and they can do it 5 times, and other people have to refinance their homes or borrow or, just to have one shot. And why don't I have eggs at 30? Like, what's going on there? And so we started to kind of really think about these things. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up having my sister donate eggs to me. And that was a whole other complicated issue with a family egg donor. And what does it do to a family? So it's all of these things started to unfold. And we went, wow, we kind of have something interesting here. And when we started seeking other people who built their families in different ways, because for me, that was really hopeful that I could go, oh, okay, a surrogate. Oh, an egg donor. Okay, I do know people, so we just started seeking out other people who built their families in different ways. And that to me was really hopeful in learning that there are other ways that a family can come together. It's just a matter of exploring the options and figuring out what it means to an individual or couple and how to move forward. So that's really, as our lives started to kind of fall apart, so to speak, we realized we actually had a really interesting story. And as I was blogging, I realized, because I would get so many people from all over the world write to me about their situation and how different their situation was, in different parts of the world, because certain things are illegal or certain, a single woman can't get eggs without a partner. So they had a best friend pretend. I mean, it's just like, or they have to travel to another country. So I started really learning about this and I realized that our story really is a story that represents so many other people. And so then I felt really strongly that perhaps this can give voice a little bit and kind of show the reality of it. And that's why it is so raw and kind of ugly. And at times, I mean, as I look back and I'm like, okay, putting pants on could have been, okay, but, or like a little bit of makeup. My skin totally freaked out on the medications and it's not pretty, but that's what it's really like. You get fat, you get gross, you are moody. These things are real. And I wanted that. It was important to us to make it real. So we just filmed everything and we didn't think about the cameras there. And until after the fact where I was like, oh God, really? We're doing that? All right.
So at the very beginning, it was like, wait a minute, we're just going to document this journey were you documenting it to put it into a film, or was it just like, let's just document this and see what happens? Or
yeah, it was kind of let's document and see what happens. I think if anything, we thought if we end up doing IVF, we'd have a little document of how our child came to be so we can share it with the child. And if other people, maybe we'd put it on my blog or something like that, like a short just to show like, what does IVF really look like, so to speak. Mm-hmm. It was natural to us to do because, Noah and I, actually our director of photography, his name's Gabriel Peters Lazaro. The three of us lived together in college in Berkeley many years ago. And we all took film classes together. We got out of doing papers by making films. We just documented stuff. This was like old school. Like Gabe and Noah used to cut film by hand, like with a scissor. Yeah. And so it was really normal for us to be like, oh, hey, Gabe, we're going to the reproductive endocrinologist. Come, grab the camera. And, for the first year plus, we didn't even have a camera. We had a still camera that could do some video and it would overheat and we'd be blowing on it and like fanning it and stuff. And Gabe got his master's in directing from UCLA, and then it was at USC doing his PhD at the time. So he had access to cameras, so he could like rent cameras, and then eventually we just bit the bullet and bought it. But, it's expensive to make a movie and it's expensive to do fertility. So, when you're trying to do all of that at the same time, you're like, oh my God, we're full out broke. but it was important. And I'm so happy that we did it because I know that, the film does connect to a lot of people who are going through this. And then the goal really became, how do we create an open, honest dialogue about infertility so that people not going through it can understand. And it's so amazing to us when we get emails from people that says, oh, my mom wasn't getting it and I had her watch a film and now now she can support me differently. And we can, so that to me is like, yes, that's what it's for. And it's for people also to not feel so alone and crazy and, because it is crazy making. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Were there any of the scenes that were kind of hard to rewatch? Like a lot of those scenes where the doctor would, you'd get on the phone with the doctor and he'd say I got good news and I got bad. And you're like, wait a minute.
I know. It was like, it's the sound of when the button's on hold, that little music. because I recently did another transfer of the last embryo and unfortunately it didn't work out. This was my daughter's full genetic sibling embryo.
Yeah.
But I went back into the trenches, after being out for a while. And it's like, you don't realize how trauma is stored in your body. Or maybe people do, but I mean, I know that just clinically, but when I call the clinic and I'm put on hold for a second and that music, I'm like, oh my God, something bad's going to happen. It's like my armpit just starts sweating, it's like, and driving there and parking, it's like, I would get there like, okay, I'm going to throw up because there was just so many years of feeling so anxious, just physically anxious, when you show up somewhere. So
yeah, 5 years. So was that hard to wear? Was there anything that was hard to rewatch, or was that it? Or
I don't rewatch often, to be honest. We've shown the film in different ways, and it's usually like I'm rushing in at the end to do a Q&A or like something like that. I did have the opportunity. We showed it with this incredible exhibit called The Art of Infertility in Utah recently. And so I did watch parts of it there, and I don't know, just part of it just feels so long ago. So I think that's part of it. But for me, the hardest part is kind of getting towards the birth, because I think that's where I hold some feelings still, because I had a really, really hard pregnancy and a really hard birth.
Oh, okay.
And we don't show that in the film much. It's very quick because that's not what it's about, but when I watch it and see there's something in that for me that I'm like, oh my gosh, this was like a really intense experience, like all of it. So I think that's the hardest. But yeah, in terms of like an enema, it's like, certain things you're like, that's not pretty, but I'm not shy. And I also I think how real we are is why people relate.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. 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 And you kind of talk about, this is what I talk with a lot of people, obviously all the people that I talk with for fertility, a lot of them will say they feel broken.
Yeah.
And their bodies fail them. And can you maybe share your thoughts on this? Do you have a different perspective now? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I did feel that. It's like you have this idea, or a lot of people have this idea that as a woman, or you should be able to do this, right? It's like it's the most basic thing, getting pregnant, and I always felt really strongly about being a mother and having a child. There was no doubt in my mind that was a path for me. And when it started not being able to work, and the frustration and the cost, I mean, my gosh, if I just had follicles and eggs in my ovaries, this would not be an issue, So in a way, you can't help but initially feel broken. But I think when you assign that label of broken to yourself, it's very blaming, just in semantics, just in terminology. It feels like you've done something wrong. There's something defective about you. And infertility is a disease. And I think that because a lot of insurance doesn't cover it, and IVF and different treatment options are essentially elective because they're not covered and whatever else, and very expensive, it makes it feel like it's not a legitimate disease. But it is. And people who have other illnesses, I don't think take on the feeling of broken in the same way, in the terms of like, this is my fault. I did something. I'm bad. I don't deserve to be a parent. Maybe I'm all these things. And I think the thoughts go through your mind, and they did initially for me. And then I was like, hold up, let's back up here. My body's not working the way I want it to. My body's not working the way I wanted to, but I didn't do anything wrong. And I think once people release the blame, the self-blame, they can kind of go like, okay, there's a situation here, and focus on the parts of your body that you do have, essentially. And that's what I did. It's like I kind of went, all right, well, I've got a uterus. So, it's like my eggs or my ovaries don't function very well. I did nothing to deserve that. I didn't do anything dangerous. It just happens. Sometimes funky things happen to people, and we don't always know why. So I think feeling broken is really, really common, but also really important for people to understand that there's no fault here.
Yeah, to really reframe that.
Yeah.
And you've talked a lot about the finances kind of through this, and it is one of those, throughout our conversation here, then in the movie as well, about what, as far as the finances, and at one part your husband lost his job. So maybe kind of talk about how that played into your ability to move forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just such a stressor for so many people. For people who it's not a stressor, infertility treatments are a luxury. when you really think about it. And that's the access to care issue is huge. It's extremely challenging for a lot of people. So we were lucky enough, we did get a grant from the Baby Quest Foundation, which is a fabulous nonprofit based actually locally for me in California and Los Angeles. My parents were willing to help in some ways, but the first round we did all on our own. And that was like, we were just 30. It's like we're just kind of getting our careers off the ground. I got out of grad school. It's like you're not really expecting to dump $15,000-$20,000 on this kind of stuff. And so when we were thinking about what to do next, finances definitely had to play a role because that was our reality. And it was one of the harder conversations to go into the doctor after our IVF. So I have diminished ovarian reserve. Maybe I should have said that like off the bat. But so in terms of numbers, I was always I probably would never have very high numbers. So we were chasing, 1 or 2 eggs, and to spend that much money on those kind of odds, we had to do it once to just try, and we got nothing. And well, we did actually pretty well for me. I did a lot of acupuncture. I was really, really working hard, changing my diet and doing everything I could to get more follicles. And it worked. I did get more follicles. Unfortunately, when they were come time to turn into embryos, everything just dissolved in the dish. So I didn't have anything to transfer. My doctor basically said, if you had all the money in the world, you could do this 3 or 4 times. But if you really want to have a baby, you got to think of other choices. So egg donation became on the table. And then we thought, okay, well, should we just let go of some of this and move forward with adoption? Because that's a little bit more of a guarantee, because adoption works essentially. So, it's like you had to really think about all these things, and one thing kind of led to another. And I think for each person or couple, you have to think about what you need to do to know you've done everything you could. And even though I know we could have done more IVF, I kind of felt okay letting go of my eggs at that time, because partially of the finances, but also because of the odds and the fact that it wasn't that important to me, to have a genetically related child. I was like, this kid will dodge some bullets. It's fine. And then I had my sister willing to donate. So I think that played a huge part too, because, we didn't pay her. She did it out of the kindness of her heart. But that cycle still costs a lot of money, because you're doing IVF and then, with her and all that stuff. So yeah, none of this is cheap, and cost definitely dictated some of our choices.
Yeah. And I think one of the couples in your movie was at $250,000 they'd spent.
Yeah. And that's for both kids. And they adopted one child. And this is like their oldest kid is maybe going to college soon. So this is a long time ago. So that's a lot of money back then too. But they had some coverage too through their work. I know that, but one of their kids was through adoption, and they adopted him after like 6 rounds of IVF and donor eggs, and they miscarried twins. I mean, it was like everything, so by the time they got to adoption, they'd already spent a lot of money. And then the other child was egg donation and surrogacy. So that's no cheap experience too. Yeah. But yeah, people can spend a lot of money on this. And if you have it, great, that's helpful. And if you don't, it feels even more painful.
Yeah. Did you have a financial thing where you're like, no, we're not going to go over this amount in your head at all? Or was it like, no, we're going until we've got the baby?
I don't know that we had a number, but we just couldn't do. So after my sister's egg donation didn't work, another, like getting an anonymous egg donor would have been $30,000, another $30,000 for us essentially. And we just knew we couldn't do that. So it wasn't even, that's actually how we came into embryo donation, because I was looking, I was just the amount of research and obsession that goes into this for so many people. And I'm one of them. It's like one doctor, I had a lead from one doctor out here who told me there's a place in Seattle that has eggs that are frozen and they're shared and they're cheaper. It's like, so you're like, oh, okay. So it was in this sort of research process of looking for frozen eggs, because he told me, he's like, they're like $8,000. So I was like, that's so cheap. Like, where can I find $8,000 eggs, right? And he was wrong. They were like $20,000. But I ended up kind of connecting to this clinic that was, fabulous. And they ended up having what turned out to be the embryo that is our daughter. So, things kind of, when one door closes, what do people say? Like one door closes, another one opens. And it felt like that through the journey, that we were not going to be able to afford a round of donor eggs. Also because I'd never been pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
I was so worried that like, what if we spent another $30,000 on donor eggs and I can't carry? Like I found out there's something wrong with my uterus or something like that. And that's a really expensive test, and, so we had to just kind of rethink things along the way. But I don't think we ever had we just sort of said like, we can't do this. It wasn't like a number,
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you kind of talked about the genetic side of it, because I've got obviously with my experience with having both my kids with donor eggs, I get a lot of people coming to me and asking me about how did you tell the children, what did you bond with them, what's your take on the genetic side of it? Yeah, and for me I'm like super tall, so I am 6 foot, so I wanted the donors for me to have a little bit of height to them. That was my main thing. But like for the genetic, wasn't really a big deal for you. Like can you maybe dig into that a little bit?
I think for me, I was able to let go of my direct genetic connection early on because I knew my eggs just were probably not going to be able to be used,
Mm-hmm.
So I think I started really wrapping my head around that early. And then when we moved to my sister, it felt like, okay, that's sort of like the next best option, and my sister's really smart and she's like, she's like great.
She's a doctor, isn't she?
She's a doctor.
Yeah, there you go.
She's kind. She's always been a lot skinnier than me, whatever, just like, she's just great. And she's such a great soul. She's a great person. So that was kind of a no-brainer for us to move in that direction. And then when it came to selecting the embryo, I was a little bit tied to my heritage, interestingly. Mm-hmm. And it's like when we start talking about adoption and you have to check all these boxes. So we went through some of the adoption process. We found an agency we liked. We started looking at what it takes to move forward with that. And so part of it is you have this checklist of what you're open to in terms of nationality or drug exposure or whatever. So we started thinking about that. And with adoption, we really felt like whatever child's meant to be or whatever child comes our way that is healthy, we really don't want to have a child that was drug exposed and whatever. We were really open to anything in terms of nationality or ethnicity or whatever. And then we sort of felt that way too with embryo donation, but it was less about just like seeking an embryo and more about the fact that I connected with this clinic and just stumbled upon something that felt like a good fit. So what that meant for me is I'm having this conversation, and when I was asking about egg donors there, I'm half Japanese. So I was saying, well, do you have any donors that are half Japanese? Or, if you say Asian, they literally give you everything from Indian to Pacific Islander to Chinese, Japanese. They just lump everything into the same, all Asian ethnicities into the same category, which is all right. But for people who are specific ethnicities within the category of Asian, sometimes you kind of want something that connects more to your heritage or whatever. Mm-hmm. But so, and then I just asked us, like, do you have any embryos that are half Japanese? And they happen to just have that.
Oh,
and
wow.
I think that was part of what it surprised me first off. And I was like, oh, they're like already there, and, that would cut my husband out of the equation totally. But there was something about it that just kind of felt right. And so the woman sent me both profiles. So both of them were made with an egg donor from their donor egg bank, both sets, I should say. There's 2 different sets. And the husband, so the sperm of the infertile couple. So it's like an egg donor and the sperm of the infertile couple. So that's not technically a sperm donor, right? That's so that infertile couple, the original couple, used the egg donor. They created a child, and then they had some unused embryos that they put up for donation. Mm-hmm. So they sent us information on both sets, and one of them really spoke to me. And I was like, that's our kid. My husband, what? And the egg donor actually is a 5'11" Norwegian woman. And I am a 5'4" half Japanese woman. So it's like, you couldn't get farther from what I look like. But then the sperm, the husband of the couple that used that tall Norwegian donor was Japanese. So it would be my same ethnic mix in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But my girl's going to have long, nice legs.
She's going to have some height. Yeah.
I
love it.
And that's actually the one question that kind of busts us out a little bit, because she looks like both of us. Like, she really does look like both of us. But people, she's 3 as of yesterday, and she looks Like she's really, really tall.
Oh,
So
she's
people are
tall.
like, oh, is your husband really tall? And I said, no, but the egg donor was, and that opens up a conversation. So when it comes to disclosing, I mean, my kid, that she was very special in how she came to us, and she knows, and we've made little books for her and stuff like that. And I'm very, obviously with our movie and my, blog and my work and stuff like that, I'm very open about that. And I feel like being open allows me to take back whatever ideas of shame or secrecy, or I don't know, just any of that stuff that gets yucky in it. Like I've been able to translate all of any initial feelings to just feelings of absolute pride in her and in our ability to reframe the ideas of family, and just gratitude towards the people that helped us along the way, donors and doctors and whatever else. So I think when I share, that's how I feel when I'm sharing.
Yeah. And so is it something how did you, do you use books to tell her, or?
We made this little book for her that just says, she was made in a very special way, and, very simple.
Yeah, she's only 3.
Yeah. And the word donor is thrown around sometimes, but, honestly, like, that's just not what's as important anymore. It's important that she understands and she, just gets it. But at the end of the day, what's more important for her is who's going to play Cinderella with her, or who's going to, it's like we're in a different place now, thank God. And we're just not focused on, I don't wake up in the morning and look at her like she's not genetically related to, like, it just doesn't, it really doesn't matter anymore. And I think that's the transition of the story. For so long, this was our story and our struggle, and we had to think about all these things, and they all feel so big. And then once the child's there, you're like, wow, I really was really stressed out and focused about things and what ifs, that all that matters is that she's here and she's healthy and that we have a good time, and she gets to choose her outfit 4 times in the morning, and those kind of day-to-day joys and struggles.
Yeah, absolutely. People ask me that, did you have problems bonding? Or I'm like, this child came out of me. Both came out of me. They are my children. Like you'll do anything for your children, right? That maternal bond. But when people ask me that, it never even occurred to me that I wouldn't bond with them.
Right.
And the
and that same,
part, I'm like, I don't need to have, I don't know, am I that fabulous that I need to have my exact genes?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also people who have children via surrogacy or through adoption or different things, it's the pregnancy and the birth is sort of a really small piece of the more important journey of parenthood. And so the bonding and everything else, that happens as you parent. And it doesn't really, in my opinion, it doesn't necessarily matter where or how the child comes to you, or what it looks like, or what genes it's had, or whose nose it has, and, blah, blah, blah. It's just how you love and are as a family. And
I love that. So I guess if someone is looking at this journey and sort of maybe they've got to look at other options, and you talk about that a lot in the film of many of the couples you have they've had their children different ways. Like how do we look at this journey with an open mind?
Yeah, that's the key. Well, I think a lot of it, you can't get there until you get there a lot of times. So I think, when I started this, I was like, oh my God, we're gonna have to do IVF. Like, get out of here. That's not natural. And for somebody like I grew up, I rarely went to the doctor. My mom is a very holistic healer. She used ginger and mustard to cure illnesses and stuff like that. So just the idea of having to make a baby outside the bedroom was just medical, or shots, or, oh my God, injecting hormones into myself. Like, I don't even take aspirin, so there's like these mind shifts that occur, and you kind of have to do them when you cross that bridge. So I could never in my early stages have been like, embryo donation, yay. You know what I mean? Like, so I think part of it is trusting the process and being able to go step by step and just assessing where you're at emotionally, trying to think of like having an open mind, meaning if you know that you want to be a parent, and you can kind of think of, okay, if I'm open to adoption, I know this will happen. And then you think of what is important to you. For me, I really, really wanted to carry and have that opportunity. And so I was going to do what it took to get there. And so if that meant carrying a child that wasn't using my eggs, or wasn't using my eggs or my husband's sperm, those were things I was willing to try. But you have to give yourself time to grieve the losses and hold the excitement that modern science allows for some of these opportunities. It's conflicting in a lot of ways. You're kind of going like, oh my God, I'm so sad, but oh my gosh, this exists. So it's balancing. Yeah, it's like balancing those two things and just sitting with, well, what does this mean for me? And how does my heart feel? And how can I allow some more space in my heart to welcome a child, however this child comes to me? And that it becomes less about me, less about my ego, less about my whatever, and more just about, I want to have a child. I want to have a family. So I'm going to have to make some sacrifices in order to have some gains, or just whatever kind of mantras and just being able to kind of honor where you're at each step along the way and open yourself up to the different choices. And I think that was a big goal for our film too, and why we interviewed these different couples, because for me, talking to different people who did things in different ways, I went, oh, okay, well that's kind of interesting. It's this shift. It's like something that's really weird turns into like, okay, let me find out about that. That's interesting. And then it becomes kind of cool. So I think there's that, just, it's a process a little bit. So I think it's allowing space to have that process, talking to somebody who's versed in this to help you kind of ask yourself the questions and grieve the losses that you're feeling, and then be able to move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to kind of have that, almost that stillness too, and the quiet, to be able to sit, to feel it, because sometimes we're going to push it away, right? To feel, and then feel what feels right for you.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And in the film, you do some you look at some natural solutions, definitely. There's some sessions there where you had a lady she was spitting on you, like there's. I'm like, oh my goodness.
We did everything. We did everything we could, and I had this amazing acupuncturist. Her name was Gilly Stupel. She's out here in LA, and she was just so great. And I did herbs, and I drank these things that just, it was just gross. But, I got my body into fighting shape, I would say. Mm-hmm. I did a yoga teacher training. So I was trying to match, kind of emotionally and spiritually in the same way to this idea of openness and non-attachment, and just feeling strong in my body after years of not feeling strong. So I really did everything I could. And I think that's what people need to do, whatever speaks to you. Sometimes it's acupuncture and natural stuff for people, and sometimes it's not. And it's whatever you feel like you need to do. So I felt like I needed to do that. It didn't work all the way for me. And that's not to say that it doesn't work for people. And it's not to say that being in good health isn't really important, But I did acupuncture throughout, and I loved her. And she was more just a support also. And then I did Reiki once, just to try, just kind of looking into like energy healings. Mm-hmm. I saw this shaman, we didn't film this, she wouldn't let us, in Topanga Canyon, which is kind of a little community up where us. And we drove to the top of the hill. And I don't know what was happening here. This woman was like, she was like, caw. There was just like, spirit animals. And I was like we were there for hours, and it was really hot. And I was just like crying, and she was shaking rattles around. It was just like a bizarre, but in that moment I felt something. Like I just felt, okay, I'm trying something, or I'm relaxing, or whatever else. Like, again, didn't get me pregnant, but we wanted to try it. So we did. And so the shaman thing, that was actually a 2-day event. And it was this woman, we just call her Abuela because she was my good friend's grandmother. Actually, my good friend's husband's grandmother, and she came from Oaxaca, and she like cures cancer and stuff, apparently, and I'm not going to poo-poo anything. It's like, she's got her own thing. Again, didn't get me pregnant, but it was a 2-day event and made really, really good footage. She like hung me upside down, and she was spitting on me. And there was one scene, this is not in the movie either, but we should do like an outtakes of just Abuela, but like she's rubbing an egg on me, and there was a lot going on in that piece. But I was in it. I was in it 100%. If something was going to work, and I don't know if that's hope or desperation or some combination of it, but like everything I did, I believed was going to help us, and maybe it did in some way. But the ultimate result wasn't that, and it resulted in the pregnancy. What resulted in the pregnancy was I had a good embryo. Mm-hmm. That's it. I did some hypnosis too, which I thought was actually really helpful. And that's more because I had a lot of complications in pregnancy, and it looked like I was going to lose it. And I just like hunkered down, and I did some hypnosis and just a lot of visualizations and stuff. And I do feel like that helped in some way, just spiritually, maybe, I don't know. But, at the end of the day, this was a healthy, good embryo. And that's not something that I was able to create with my own eggs. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then you're the host, right? So the energy and the things that you brought in and doing some of those things, we don't really know how it all plays in, right? There's a combination of science and then also the unknown, which, some of that stuff is wild, but you got to do what feels right for you.
Yeah. And like, I just remember I had a subchorionic hematoma. So it's like the embryo separated. Mm-hmm. And so the day we heard the heartbeat, we also saw that there was like a giant blood clot all around the embryo, and the embryo was so tiny and this clot was so big and heavy. My doctor was like, so here's what might happen. It'll wipe it out. Like the blood clot will just come out and it'll wipe the embryo out. And I was like, but there's nothing like genetically wrong. These weren't tested embryos or anything. So he's like, no, there's nothing wrong with the embryo. It's just unfortunate. And I was like, F that. I am not going down like that. I was like, hell no. So I was in bed for like 6 months of the pregnancy, off and on. It was rough, but for that intense period, I mean, I don't know if I went to the bathroom. Like I just was in bed, lying there, just bleeding chunks in the middle of the night, hysterically crying, like standing over the toilet. Like, do I grab the blood with a plastic bag? I'm like, you don't even know what you're thinking. It's like, it always happened like right in the middle of the night. And I went to the doctor every day. He was fabulous. I would just text him like, I'm waiting. It's like, okay, I'll meet you at the office. It's like 6 a.m. on a Sunday. And so he'd do an ultrasound, and every time she was there, but pieces of that blood was coming out, or that probably wasn't very good English, parts of the blood mass or blood clot, like they were coming out of me. They had to dissolve or come out. And so that was just, it was a couple of weeks of that. And so I didn't move. And I did hypnosis, and I just was like lying there just.
Yeah, hypnosis is so powerful. To help during that. Yeah, like a lot of trauma going on there too. Constant worry and
you're just like, oh my God, please. But anyway.
Yeah, can you think of anything as far as resources you'd like to recommend to the audience? A book or a website or an app, anything that you...
Yeah, I was thinking about like what helped me. And granted, remember, I went through this in like 2012. So there's a lot more out there now. And I remember there's a book called Waiting for Daisy that I really liked by Peggy Orenstein. And so I read that a couple of times. Yeah. And so that was like it was like more of a story. She's a really good writer.
Yeah, she is.
And there's another book that came out more recently, or just a little while ago, by a woman named Rebecca Fett. I want to say Fett. It's called this. It Starts with the Egg.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a helpful book in some ways too. One of the doctors that we had in Seattle, Dr. Laura Shaheen, wrote a book called Not Broken, which is about miscarriage and stuff like that. But she's very sensitive, and it's an easy read. And so if you've had recurrent loss, that could be a good resource as well. And I learned about a new app called Fruitful Fertility recently, which is like a mentorship program. And like, that's something I actually thought of a long time ago. And I'm so glad that people have created this, but it's like for people who are in the journey to be matched with a mentor who's already has a child, who's like gone through it, which I think is kind of cool. So that's an app, or that's, something that people can kind of sign up for. It's free. So it's cool.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of came across it recently. We're associated with the Art of Infertility, which is this nonprofit organization that does art exhibits. So if anybody hears about that in their area, go see it, because it's cool. It's just really well done. And so we showed the film in Utah recently. They're going to be in LA in June. So that's another kind of thing to connect to the community. I know there's a lot of sort of secret Facebook groups and other things like that. It just gets support where you can. And it's very isolating. I think there's just more out there now. So I think that's great. And I hope that our work and our film can help also create more of a community too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you share a success story, something you'd like to share with the audience?
I could share actually a little bit about somebody we highlighted in the film, Candace and Tommaso. They're a couple who ended up adopting, and they went through, I want to say 9 IVF cycles, and a couple of them were with donor eggs, so several different donors. She had so many different miscarriages and losses, and we actually met them, or we came to film them for the first time on the day that they were going to go meet the birth mother. So they were flying out later that afternoon, and I was like, wow, what a cool way to meet somebody, But then we were really interested in like, well, what happens? Because you hear about adoptions that fall through or whatever. We went back again, as they were getting closer to the birth of their child, and then again after they had the child. And part of that was because also we didn't know if we were going to have a resolution. We knew we were going to have to stop filming this thing at some point because it was just getting to be a lot. We had a conversation that Noah and I decided, like, okay, if we are unresolved at the end, which is a reality for a lot of people, and then you start to consider things about living child free and adopting, or whatever makes sense to you. But anyways, we thought we might get there and it might just take forever to figure this out. We wanted to leave people on a happy note, on a success. And so Candace and Tommaso were successful in that they, did everything that they could. They tried in the ways that felt right to them. And then they landed on their child through open adoption. And it was just 100% their kid. Like the second we all met Max, we were like, yeah, this was your kid the whole time. Like, what are we thinking? She's a fabulous mom, and she's just a great advocate for infertility and a wonderful person. So their success really helped us along the way because they had their baby before we even kind of had things figured out.
Okay. So this would be like 4 years ago then.
Yeah. He's about 4.5-ish or something, maybe even 5.
So you wrapped the film. Did you wrap the film? So I guess obviously 3 years ago then, or yeah. And then you went through a Kickstarter campaign, or we did an Indiegogo thing. Before that, we just realized we needed to hire a professional editor. I mean, Noah was up all night long in the middle of the night trying to edit. And he's not an editor, so he didn't have the skills to do it. And just stuff costs money to color correct and we had to get insurance. So we had to, like all of these things just like are really expensive. So we raised a bit of money that could help us finish it. And then we were trying to find distribution, and that's what took the longest, trying to find a space for it to be out in the world in a way that made it accessible for people. So it is now on Netflix in, a lot of different English-speaking countries. So it's kind of worldwide English-speaking countries on Netflix, which was a huge win for us because, here's this little film, but now people can actually watch it, and it's not going to cost them anything, And so it is also available on Vimeo for people in other countries. Vimeo on demand, and then iTunes and Amazon, we put it out in that way too. But Netflix is the easiest probably to watch it in. And that's amazing.
So
was it a hard push to get it on Netflix, or how long did that take?
Yeah, it's all hard.
So I'm like, wow, it's on Netflix.
Yeah, it's all hard, and we had agents and we had people in our corner, and it just takes a long time, and it's hard. It's a hard sell. Infertility is kind of. There's a lot of talk about it, but it's a little complicated. And I think what's hard is that when you say it, it just is like, oh, that's depressing. And I really don't see our film as depressing. No. I see it as, or sad. I mean, I shed a lot of tears, and that's real, but it's also funny, and it's also really thought provoking, and it forces you to think about things that people who just, have a glass of wine and get knocked up, like, don't think about. And I think there are a lot of ethical and, psychological issues that come up that you're like, oh, all right, well, what's that about? And I think it's got a lot of different pieces to it, but perhaps I'm biased.
No, I totally agree with you. Yeah. Cause it is like you will cry, like you just putting that out there, but it is inspiring. It is hopeful, and it just really, and especially if someone doesn't understand what you're going through, to say, hey, check this film out. Maybe you'll kind of get what this is like.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the sharing the message with taking it out of the secrecy and letting people know what this journey is really like.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool. So we can find as you said, your film on, so basically go to onemoreshotfilm.com.
Yes, that's the website.
Yeah, they can check it out there. So Netflix, Vimeo on demand, and you said iTunes?
And iTunes as well. Yeah. And people want to sign up on our website. We're going to do different screenings around sometimes and different talks. I really want to focus on supporting people on a larger level if I can. So, going to my website, grobel.com, and signing up for the mailing list there. Like I don't send a lot out. Actually, I've never sent anything out, I will say. But as we're kind of doing this and really forming, we want to use this as an educational tool, the film, in different ways. So
absolutely.
I think it's important to do so. But if people want to be in touch with us, that's probably the best way to do it. There's also the One More Shot One More Shot Films on Facebook, and it's One More Shot Doc on Twitter. And we just started Instagram. I don't know anything about social media, so my husband does it, but he just has an Instagram account. So, which I assume is One More Shot Film or something like that. I could yell into the other room to get it correct. But anyways, I can email all that to you.
We'll have it in the show notes for people to click it out. But yeah, definitely check it out on Netflix if you have that, or Vimeo on Demand, or iTunes. Definitely recommend the movie. And awesome. Thanks Maya for sharing your story with us. It's so inspiring, and that you've become really so vulnerable. And thank you so much for all the work you do in the community as well.
Thank you.
Hey there, Sarah Clark here. So are you struggling to have your baby? First of all, please know that my heart goes out to you. I support couples worldwide who are struggling with infertility to conceive and have healthy babies. Women like Rita, who gave birth to her beautiful daughter after following my fertility coaching system. Or Danielle, who after 2 failed IUIs was able to get pregnant after a supercharger fertility discovery call with me. So here's how you get my help for free. So I offer a free Supercharger Fertility Discovery call, and on that call, I'll create a plan with you that is going to help you fast track your success. So this call is not for everyone, and I'm really picky about who I get to speak with, and I have a strict but totally reasonable criteria that needs to be met in order for us to move forward. So here's who I can help. So first of all, you need to be able to explore your infertility diagnosis in a new light. So this offers for people who are open-minded, they're coachable, and if you can do that and want to double or triple your chances at the fertility clinic or get pregnant, awesome. So let's get on the phone and chat. Also, you must be an action taker. So someone who's committed to seeing results, you're able to follow directions. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do anything bizarre. But if you're one of those people who like to consume a ton of information, but don't like to spend time implementing and seeing results, then the call's not really for you. So I only want to spend time with people who are genuinely committed to their own success. So just click on the link in the show notes and apply, or go to fabfertile.com and click on the free consult. So it's a really short application that just tells you about your health, how long you've been trying to conceive, and how soon you'd like to be pregnant. So seriously, this is going to be the best time you've ever spent on your fertility. Looking forward to chatting. Talk soon. Thank you for listening to Get Pregnant Naturally. Seriously, it means the world to me that you're here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of upcoming episodes. I'm excited to offer you a special gift. If you are a U.S. resident, text FERTILE, FERTILE, to 345345. You'll be prompted to enter your email address, and you will receive our 3-day free fertility diet challenge. The challenge includes delicious chef-prepared recipes that are specifically designed to enhance your fertility. Download the recipes and try them this weekend. For U.S. residents, text FERTILE, FERTILE, to 345345. For non-U.S. residents, go to www.fertilitydietfreebie.com to access your special gift. That is Fertility Diet Freebie, FERTILITY, Diet, DIET, freebie, FREEBIE.com to access the 3-day free fertility diet challenge. And I love this quote by Dr. Mark Hyman. He's the medical director of the Cleveland Clinic Center for Functional Medicine and a chairman of the Institute for Functional Medicine. What you find at the end of your fork is more powerful than anything you'll find at the bottom of a pill bottle. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.